Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Today's breaking news is that inside the city of Dnipro, the Kamaz factory, which is responsible for producing the largest number of Kamaz trucks and vehicles for the Russian war effort, has caught on fire today within the city and is apparently burning to the ground at this very moment. We do not know if a Ukrainian attack was behind this or not, but we did see that a Ukrainian attack several weeks ago ended up hitting Naberezhny 725 miles inside the Russian Federation. Not only that, but the Kamaz factory being on fire means that the production halls are most likely going to be shut down in the meantime, possibly showing that there will be no more Kamaz trucks for the Russian armed forces throughout a short while during the war until repairs can be effected on the factory and manufacturing can continue. This is a major deal, as Kamaz and Ural are the major providers of Russian supply trucks so far during the war effort, and without these supply trucks, it is completely impossible for the Russian military to keep their soldiers maintained with enough ammunition, food, and supplies to be able to continue to fight this war that is currently ongoing inside of Ukraine. The fact that the Kamaz factory has caught on fire and is currently shut down due to the damage that was caused from the fire is once again leading us to believe that a Ukrainian partisan attack may have been responsible for this and may once again be attacking critical Russian infrastructure in hopes to destroy it so that way it's no longer usable by the Russians. At the exact same time, we were able to hear that a Ukrainian drone hit another substation inside of Bryansk, knocking out the power within this area. We hear the explosion right there, and as the video loops around, you'll be able to see the explosion right there. It was that little orange glow at the very beginning of the clip. The attacks on the substations inside Bryansk appear to be targeted, attempting to knock out certain power relays and stations heading to different kinds of vital either infrastructure or vital manufactories inside of the area. This is something that once again is leading us to believe that a large attack has happened and there have been multiple explosions reported within the Russian Federation overnight, as we're seeing that within Naberezhny and Bryansk, separate incidents with critical infrastructure and critical industry have happened that are knocking out vital Russian means to keep producing equipment and goods for the war effort. Meanwhile, far down south and in the area of Rostov-on-Don, or really inside of the Don of the Russian Federation, we were also able to see that some damage had been caused by a Ukrainian attack on the Chuvskaya, and let me actually get that correct really quickly. The Chuvskaya, you know what, we're just going to call this the Don Airfield. We can see right here that there was a serious amount of damage that was caused from an attack, while in the first satellite picture we saw that a Russian aircraft was stationed on this part of the tarmac. The fire appears to have come from the stall right next over. We can't really tell if this was an aircraft that was damaged or knocked out, but we have reason to believe it most likely was. It was most likely that an aircraft had been pulled into the stall on the tarmac at some point, ended up getting hit and also destroyed. Because if you notice, the fire has spread behind the aircraft, a lot like fuel may have been dripping from the engines of the plane, which allowed the fire to start spreading further away from the actual tarmac and on into the green in between the tarmac and the actual runway. This is showing us that some serious damage is still being dealt by the Ukrainians on the Russian forces, not only their manufacturing plants and their electrical substations, all critical parts of the war effort, but also the Russian Air Force as well, which is a pretty big deal. There's really no other way to describe how big of a deal these Ukrainian attacks really are, and it's proving that the Russians practically have no air defense inside of the Russian Federation to speak of, and most likely never will. Let me know in the comments below if y'all ever think that the Russians will be able to get enough air defense inside the Russian Federation, because over the course of 2 years now, and especially over the past 5 months, we have seen the Ukrainian attacks have endlessly been hitting targets inside the Russian Federation, and almost none of these attacks, from what we know, have been intercepted and shot down before they made it to their target. It is entirely showing that the Russians are apparently devoid of air defense, at least out of the war in Ukraine or that operational theater, and that there is really no way that the Russians will have in practicality to stop or shoot down any of these incoming drones or any of these Ukrainian attacks that are causing so much damage to the Russians' ability to continue to wage the war. Meanwhile, we've also gotten news that a Ukrainian partisan group has sabotaged a Russian railway, knocking out a interesting little bit of equipment. I'll just let y'all see what it is right here in this clip. And we're going to be muting that, but we can see right here that a Russian locomotive, not a substation, an actual locomotive of the Russian Federation, caught on fire and burned to the ground because a partisan attack was able to reach it and just throw a Molotov inside of it, setting the thing on fire and burning it completely to the ground. This is on top of another Ukrainian partisan attack that occurred on the very outskirts of Moscow, which ended up destroying several Ka-32 multi-rotor utility helicopters that were being used by the Russian government. We're starting to see that not only are Ukrainian drone attacks becoming wildly successful and really inflicting some heavy damage onto the Russian Federation, but not only that, partisan forces are now getting to places that we've never seen before, into rail yards and also onto airfields, and are destroying vital engines for the large part that keep the Russians running. Locomotives are incredibly vital to the war effort, and not only that, locomotives as a whole are incredibly expensive to produce, considering that they are fairly customized vehicles. And a lot of people are going to say, why, Enforcer? That's not true. In Europe, there are tons of trains. You can travel anywhere in Europe on a train. That's true, but there's still not a lot of them. When you compare the amount of main battle tanks in the world, which are in the tens of thousands, versus the amount of automobiles in the world, which are in the hundreds of millions, and then you compare all of that to locomotives, which are only in the thousands in some parts of the world, and inside of Russia, I believe there is only about 1,000 locomotives or so, you can see that they're fairly limited in production number, and for that reason, they're a lot more expensive to produce, because they're largely custom made. And for that reason, the loss of a single locomotive, no matter what kind, is a massive loss that will be felt throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation. Not only that, but the loss of such a locomotive once again means that Russia's logistical abilities, at least within that region, are going to be impaired until they can bring in a replacement locomotive to take its place. This is going to be once again showing that if the Ukrainians can keep up these kinds of attacks and end up knocking out dozens of Russian locomotives, they may actually cause a serious dent in Russian logistical abilities and begin to backlog the supply lines that are along the railroads, which is most if not all of Russia's supplies, and start to cause a bottleneck in that area where they either have to transport more goods by truck or plane, which we already know that they do not have a large amount of transport planes. Not only that's incredibly expensive to maintain and fly those, and they don't really have a large amount of usable trucks. And with the Kamaz factory now being knocked out of commission for a while, we don't know how long, but it will be for a while, they probably will not be able to start just spitting out trucks to be able to try and fill in for the railroads if the railroads continue to sustain that kind of major damage. Meanwhile, in the area of southern Ukraine, we were also able to hear major news today from Oleksandr Syrsky, the chief of the armed forces, that Ukraine has liberated the Nestria island in the middle of the Kherson or the Dnipro estuary. This is a very important thing, as the island wars that have been occurring in this area have been going on for an incredibly long time. And while these islands seem to be marshy and pretty much pointless to control, there is actually a large importance to controlling these islands. They allow for both sides to have a buffer zone in between them and the enemy, and this means that if the Ukrainians are able to take control of most of these islands, the Russians will have less of a barrier against attacks by Ukrainian forces near to the area of Ola Pristan or Stara Zubrivka or Zabarny or any of these other villages where the Ukrainians could push forward and possibly threaten Russian forces that are on the Kinburn Spit and even farther east. But this is serious news. And just to quickly take y'all on a quick little break from the Ukraine war and the updates there, the military parade that happened in North Korea last night, of course, was something that a lot of people wanted to talk about and watch. And there was something very interesting that came out of that military parade, and I'll be showing y'all this kind of as a little bit of a later to the video treat. In the city of Pyongyang, where the military parade is held, we got to see that there was a special part of the parade where an interesting array of vehicles was shown to have weaponry fitted onto them. Many people may think that it's a joke, and it makes North Korea look like they're incredibly backwards, and not only that, incredibly barbaric with the way they think they will fight a war, which is largely true. But the other thing that's very interesting to note about this is that these are not old vehicles that they're pulling out of the woodworks in acts of desperation. These vehicles are brand new, and they were designed for the purpose that I'm about to show y'all on film. So let me quickly show y'all this, because this is actually quite shocking. This is a special section of the North Korean military parade where we see that they have equipped multiple launch rocket systems on the back of farm tractors on specially made trailers. And these are an attempt to weaponize the agricultural industry and create a target out of every single tractor that exists in North Korea. We can also see Kim Jong-un and his daughter just to the left, and also the generals of the North Korean armed forces. But to really quickly explain something that's interesting about these tractors is that they are fairly new. They're actually largely, I believe, imported from China. But the fact is that by doing this and showing this publicly, they're showing that the entire agricultural industry of North Korea that uses any kind of tractor may actually be a weapon of war and a target to be destroyed. This isn't really that big of a deal. Of course, the United States, really Western forces, could easily destroy the North Korean armed forces on the ground if they're not fighting in a guerrilla form. If they're fighting in a conventional form, they'll easily be destroyed. But the thing is that this is creating a target of the North Korean citizenry. Because if we are to have to attack agricultural vehicles like tractors, there are going to be a lot of those that aren't in any kind of military capacity. Also, notice right here, these are delivery vans, some kind of refrigerated delivery vans or some kind of bakery delivery vans. Some form of a delivery van. That's really the most important part. Once again, custom made to fit multiple launch rocket systems inside of it that can be camouflaged whenever it's moving around. But once it's ready to fire off these rockets, it then sets up just like it is right here in the military parade, and they fire. Another interesting thing about these delivery trucks is that unlike the agricultural vehicles, most of the crew members in these delivery trucks are actually dressed up like delivery men. And you will see this here in just a second. Right there. This guy is not dressed up like a soldier of the North Korean Armed Forces. This guy is dressed up like a delivery man. He's about to deliver your milk. And not only that, the guys who actually operate the MLRS are also dressed as delivery men or bakers as well. This is something that is a violation of the rules of war, a violation of the Geneva Convention to disguised armed forces as civilians, as a conventional armed force. This is technically a violation of the Geneva Convention. But it is showing that North Koreans, if a war was to begin, not only would they most likely use nuclear weapons, but they would also camouflage a lot of their forces as some sort of delivery vehicles or civilian equipment, making sure that if we were to attack them, we would most likely incur a high amount of civilian casualties because we wouldn't be able to distinguish the North Korean armed forces from the North Korean citizenry. In a second, they're going to show the dump trucks, which appear to be outfitted with missiles around the caliber of an Uragan, around 220 millimeters, and there they are right there. And we can even see that they have the top covered in sacks that are, I guess, sewn on, I'm not really sure. But when that is set down, it makes sure to make these trucks appear that they're carrying a large amount of construction materials or something along those lines. They don't look like rocket launchers. This is all incredibly bizarre, and once again showing that the world is a very weird place in the modern day. Now in North Korea showing that they will engage in guerrilla warfare for the most part, or violate the rules of war to try and get an upper hand in a confrontation. Incredibly bizarre, and not only that, very concerning for the region. But with that, that is all of the major breaking news that we have over the past 24 hours. I thank everyone so much once again for watching, and a huge shout out to all of our Patreon members who support us on Patreon. Make sure to click on the link in the description below if you would like to become one of those folks who help to make these video projects possible. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do stuff like this. Not only that, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing makes us really happy. Doesn't help us out in the algorithms, but we love to see it. So make sure to subscribe if you enjoy this, because hopefully YouTube will notify you when we put out these videos, so that way you can see them for yourself. But with that, it is time for us to end. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.